My parents forced me to pay $15,000 for my sister's wedding while I lived on Ramen, so I investigated their finances, and what I found in their files exposed everything. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Looking back, I should have seen the pattern years earlier. But when you're raised to believe family loyalty means silent sacrifice, it takes a special kind of betrayal to open your eyes. My parents, Deborah and Richard Whitman, perfected the art of favoritism with scientific precision. Mom worked as an accountant for a mid-sized firm. Dad managed construction projects, both steady middle-class jobs, that should have provided equally for their two daughters, should have. Instead, they created a family economy where my younger sister Killy was the golden investment, and I was the unpaid support staff. The system worked like this. Killy got dance lessons, horseback riding, designer clothes, and a brand new Honda Civic for her 16th birthday. I got lectures about responsibility and suggestions to get a job if you want nice things, when Killy struggled in school. They hired expensive tutors. When I needed help with calculus, Dad handed me a library card. Killy is still finding herself. Mom would explain when I questioned the disparity. You've always been the responsible one, Ellie. We know you can handle whatever life throws at you. Translation: Killy deserved investment because she was precious. I deserved nothing because I was strong enough to survive without support. The breaking point came during my junior year at State University. I was living off campus in a cramped studio apartment, working 25 hours a week at a campus bookstore while maintaining a 3.8 pawn accounting. My diet consisted primarily of ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, but I was proud of my independence. Then Killy got engaged to her boyfriend Marcus at 22, a sweet guy from a working-class family, whose parents couldn't contribute much to wedding costs. The family meeting was called for a Sunday in March. I drove home in my beat-up Toyota Corolla, expecting the usual family dinner discussion about logistics and planning. We need to talk about wedding expenses, Dad announced before we'd even finished Mom's pot roast. The venue alone is $12,000, and that's before flowers, catering, photographer, dress. My stomach clenched. I knew where this was heading. We've done the calculations, Mom continued, pulling out a manila folder with her typical accountant precision. Total budget comes to $45,000. We can cover $30,000 from our savings and your father's bonus this year. Killy beamed across the table, already scrolling through Pinterest boards on her phone. That leaves $15,000, Dad said, looking directly at me. We know you've been working hard and saving money for after graduation. This would be a perfect way to invest in family. The word invest made my throat burn, as if Killy's dream wedding would somehow pay dividends to the sister who's been ignored for 2 decades. I don't have $15,000, I said quietly. Your savings account statement from last month showed $14,700, Mom replied, producing a bank document from her folder. We helped you open that account, remember? We still get statements since we're co-signers. My face went hot. The money represented 3 years of bookstore wages, careful budgeting, and dreams of graduating debt-free. I'd planned to use it for a security deposit on a decent apartment and living expenses while I studied for the P exam. Ellie, don't be selfish, Killy said without looking up from her phone. It's one day, my special day. You'll make more money after you graduate. The casual cruelty of it, describing my financial sacrifice as selfish, broke something inside me. What if I say no? I asked. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dad's jaw tightened in the way that meant arguing was over. Then you're not the daughter we raised, he said. Family supports family. We've supported you for 21 years. Time to return the favor. 3 weeks later, my savings account was empty. Killy's wedding was scheduled for June. The resentment ate at me for months, but the real awakening came during spring break when I visited my grandfather Hank. Dad's father had always been the family truth teller, a retired baker who'd built his modest savings through decades of forearm starts and careful spending. Your parents seem to be doing well financially, he mentioned while we sat on his porch, watching his neighbor's dog chase squirrels. New cars, kitchen renovation, that cruise to Europe last fall. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. What cruise to Europe? Grandpa Hank's eyes narrowed. The one your mother posted all over Facebook. 2 weeks in Italy and France must have cost $8,000 minimum. My parents had never mentioned a European vacation. During the months they were pressuring me for wedding money, they'd talked constantly about tight budgets and financial sacrifices. That evening, I created a fake Facebook profile and searched for my mother's account. There it was, dozens of photos from a lavish European vacation taken just 2 months before they demanded my life savings. Pictures of expensive restaurants, 5-star hotels, shopping trips through designer boutiques. The deception felt like a physical blow. While I'd been eating 99-cent ramen and wearing second-hand clothes, my parents had been funding luxury vacations and renovation projects. The $15,000 they'd claimed was desperately needed for Killy's wedding was apparently pocket change compared to their other expenses. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. Mom's new Michael Kors purse, Dad's upgraded truck. The fact that they'd somehow afforded a $20,000 kitchen renovation the same year they'd claimed financial hardship. Something didn't add up. And as an accounting major, I knew exactly how to find out what. My first mistake was assuming honesty would work. I called Mom on a Thursday evening, armed with screenshots of the European vacation photos and a list of questions about family finances. I saw the pictures from your trip to Italy, I said, trying to keep my voice level. When did you go? I don't remember you mentioning it. The pause lasted long enough for me to hear her keyboard clicking in the background. Oh, it was a last-minute opportunity. Dad's company had a conference in Rome, so we extended the trip for a few days. Most expenses were covered by work. The lie was smooth and practiced. I'd already researched Dad's construction company. They'd never had international conferences or projects. Mom, I'm confused about the timing. You asked me for $15,000 for Killy's wedding because money was tight, but then you took a European vacation. Can you help me understand? Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted from defensive to coldly authoritative. Ellie, I'm disappointed in your attitude. We raised you better than to question your parents' decisions or spy on our personal activities. Family finances are complicated, and there are aspects you don't understand. Then help me understand. This conversation is over. We've sacrificed 21 years for your education and support. The least you can do is trust our judgment and stop this ungrateful behavior." She hung up. The next day, I received a text from Killy. "Mom told me you're being weird about her vacation. Stop making drama before my wedding." My parents had successfully reframed my legitimate questions as ungrateful paranoia. The family narrative became Ellie's going through a difficult phase, rather than maybe we should explain our financial decisions. I learned my first lesson: direct confrontation allows them to control the narrative. My second approach was more systematic. If emotional appeals wouldn't work, maybe concrete evidence would. I spent 2 weeks documenting everything I could find about my parents' spending patterns. Social media posts revealed the European vacation, kitchen renovation, new appliances, regular restaurant visits, and expensive concert tickets. I cross-referenced dates with the timeline of their wedding expense demands. I created a PowerPoint presentation complete with screenshots, estimated costs, and timeline comparisons. The math was damning. They'd spent at least $30,000 on luxury items during the same 6-month period. They'd claimed financial hardship. I scheduled lunch with both parents at a neutral restaurant, bringing my laptop and a printed backup of the evidence. "I've been thinking about our conversation," I began carefully. "I put together some information that might help clarify the financial situation." I opened the laptop and began walking through the presentation. Pictures of their European vacation, receipts for the kitchen renovation that I'd found in their shared Google Photos, credit card statements that Killy had accidentally forwarded to me instead of Mom. For 5 minutes, I presented a methodical case proving they'd lied about their financial circumstances. Dad's response was swift and devastating. "Where did you get these documents?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Some were public social media posts, others were "You went through our private financial information." Mom interrupted. "You accessed our credit card statements?" "Killy accidentally forwarded. You manipulated your sister to spy on us." Dad's voice rose. "This is stalking behavior, Ellie. You're harassing your own family." Other restaurant patrons were starting to stare. I closed the laptop, face burning with embarrassment. "We're deeply concerned about your mental state," Mom said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "This obsessive behavior isn't healthy. Maybe you should speak to a counselor." They stood up simultaneously, leaving me alone at the table with a $60 lunch bill and a crushing realization that evidence meant nothing if they could successfully paint me as unstable. The family narrative evolved. Ellie's been acting erratically and invading our privacy. We're worried about her. I learned my second lesson: they're willing to destroy my reputation to protect their secrets. After 2 direct failures, I decided to work through extended family. Surely other relatives would see the injustice if presented with clear evidence. My target was Aunt Linda, Mom's younger sister, who'd always seemed more reasonable than my parents. Linda worked as a nurse and had 2 teenage sons. She understood both family loyalty and financial sacrifice. I invited her to coffee and carefully presented my case. No accusations or emotional appeals, just facts about the financial disparity and my parents' deception about their circumstances. Linda listened thoughtfully, asking clarifying questions about the timeline and expenses. She seemed genuinely concerned about the $15,000 demand and surprised about the European vacation. "That does seem inconsistent," she admitted. "Deborah never mentioned being financially stressed when we talked about Killy's wedding." She seemed excited about the expense. For a moment, I felt hope. Finally, someone was seeing the situation clearly. "I think you should talk to them," Linda continued, "but approach it differently. Maybe they made some poor financial decisions, but they're still your parents. Family relationships are more important than money." I thought we were making progress. Linda even agreed to speak with Mom about finding a more equitable solution for wedding expenses. 2 days later, I received a group text from several relatives: "Family meeting Sunday at 2 p.m. Everyone needs to attend. Important discussion about family unity." The meeting was an intervention, not for my parents' financial deception, but for my disruptive behavior and inability to accept family responsibilities. Linda sat quietly while Mom presented her version of events. I was struggling with the transition to adulthood, jealous of Killy's happiness, and obsessed with perceived slights from childhood. My investigation into family finances was evidence of disturbing psychological patterns. "We love Ellie," Dad concluded, "but she needs to understand that family loyalty means accepting decisions gracefully, not conducting investigations like we're criminals." Every relative nodded sympathetically. Aunt Linda wouldn't meet my eyes. The family narrative crystallized: Ellie's having emotional problems and needs support to overcome her resentment toward Killy. I learned my third lesson: they control the family information network. My allies can be turned against me before I even realize they're listening. Desperate for external validation, I decided to seek professional advice. If family wouldn't listen to reason, maybe neutral third parties could provide perspective or legal guidance. I made an appointment with a family law attorney who offered free consultations. She listened to my story with professional sympathy, taking notes about the financial coercion and emotional manipulation. "You're an adult," she concluded. "They can't legally force you to pay for your sister's wedding. But unfortunately, there's no law against parents showing favoritism or making unreasonable requests." "What about the deception? They lied about their financial situation to manipulate me into giving them money. Unless you can prove they committed fraud, forged documents, stole money, filed false legal claims, this remains a family dispute. Courts don't referee family fairness." The consultation left me more frustrated than before. Legal systems protect against crimes, not cruelty. My next attempt was the University Counseling Center. Surely mental health professionals could help me process the emotional manipulation and develop strategies for setting boundaries. The counselor was kind but ultimately unhelpful. She focused on my anger issues and suggested I practice accepting situations I couldn't control. When I explained the financial deception, she reframed it as different perspectives on family obligations. "Your parents see supporting your sister's wedding as a family responsibility," she explained. "You see it as unfair treatment. Both perspectives are valid. The question is how you can find peace with their decision." Even worse, she recommended family therapy, which would mean sitting in a room while my parents explained their perspective to a professional who would probably find their reasoning perfectly reasonable. I left the session feeling gaslit by someone trained to recognize manipulation. The institutional approach taught me my fourth lesson: professional neutrality often favors whoever controls the narrative. My parents' calm explanations would always sound more reasonable than my emotional accusations. 4 failures had taught me everything I needed to know about my parents' strategy: control the narrative, discredit the messenger, and use authority figures to legitimize their position. But they'd made one crucial mistake, in their confidence that I would never seriously challenge them. They'd left traces of something much worse than simple favoritism. The breakthrough came through my grandfather Hank, though he didn't realize he was providing it. During another porch conversation, he mentioned being confused about a document my parents had asked him to sign. Something about being a reference for a loan, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Your father needed my signature for some paperwork. I don't understand all that financial stuff, so I just signed where he pointed. My accounting training kicked in immediately. What kind of loan did Grandpa owe? Something about home improvements, I think. They said they needed character references from family members. That evening, I called Grandpa Hank back with specific questions. The document he'd signed was indeed a loan application reference, but for a $75,000 home equity line of credit. Not simple home improvements. Grandpa, do you remember them asking you about your income or assets? Your father filled out most of the form. He said he just needed my signature to confirm I knew them well. My blood went cold. If Dad had falsified information on Grandpa Hank's reference form inflating his income or assets to strengthen their loan application, that was fraud. Federal crime level fraud. I spent the next week researching loan application fraud and documentation requirements. Then I did something that felt deeply wrong, but was perfectly legal. I requested copies of public records related to my parents' mortgage and property holdings. What I found was better than any family intervention or legal consultation. My parents had been running a sophisticated financial shell game for at least 3 years, using fraudulent loan applications to fund their luxury lifestyle, while crying poverty to their children. The European vacation wasn't funded by Dad's work conference, it was paid for with a personal loan that listed Grandpa Hank as having an annual income of $80,000. Grandpa Hank's actual retirement income was approximately $24,000. The kitchen renovation was financed through a home equity line that claimed both my parents worked in senior management positions with salaries significantly higher than their actual incomes. Most disturbing, they'd taken out a separate loan, using my expected post-graduation income as collateral, without my knowledge or consent. The loan application listed me as a family business partner who would contribute $5,000 monthly to household expenses. They hadn't just lied to me about their financial situation, they'd committed federal fraud, using both my grandfather's identity and my future earnings as leverage. The wedding $15,000 wasn't needed for Killy's special day, it was needed to make minimum payments on the fraudulent loans they'd accumulated. This discovery required a completely different approach, instead of emotional appeals or family confrontations. I needed to build a legal case that would protect both myself and Grandpa Hank from their criminal activity. I started by documenting everything methodically, screenshots of social media posts with dates and locations, receipts and financial records I could access legally. Public property records showing loan amounts and terms. Then I contacted Grandpa Hank and carefully explained what his signature had been used for. His reaction was immediate and furious. They told me it was a character reference, he said, voice shaking with anger. They never said anything about my income or making me responsible for their debt. Grandpa Hank agreed to help gather evidence and file a formal complaint. Unlike my previous allies, he had both legal standing and genuine motivation to expose the truth. We found a lawyer who specialized in loan fraud cases. Unlike the family law attorney, this one saw clear criminal activity that needed immediate action: identity theft, loan application fraud, potential elder abuse, she listed grimly. If we can document the pattern, this becomes a law enforcement matter, not a family dispute. For the first time in months, I felt hope. The confrontation happened not in a family meeting or emotional intervention, but in a law enforcement interview room. My parents were contacted by both the Loan Fraud Investigation Unit and the District Attorney's Office. The evidence was overwhelming: falsified applications, forged income documentation, identity theft involving an elderly relative, and fraudulent use of an adult child's credit profile. When they realized the scope of the investigation, they immediately tried to blame external circumstances. We never meant to hurt anyone, Mom sobbed during her interview. We just got in over our heads financially and made some poor decisions, but the evidence showed premeditation and sophistication. This wasn't desperate people making one bad choice, it was systematic fraud designed to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't afford. Dad's response was more calculating. He claimed the income inflations were estimates, and that family members had given implied consent for financial references. Neither explanation held up against documented evidence. The criminal charges created exactly the social proof I'd been unable to generate through family appeals. Suddenly, relatives who'd dismissed my concerns were calling to ask what they'd missed. Aunt Linda, who'd participated in my intervention, left apologetic voicemails asking how she could help. I had no idea it was this serious, she said when we finally spoke. Your mother always presented everything as family drama, not actual crimes. The family narrative collapsed completely. Instead of Ellie's having emotional problems, the conversation became, how did Deborah and Richard hide this from everyone? Kelly's reaction was the most dramatic. Her wedding was 6 weeks away, funded by fraudulent loans that were now under federal investigation. You've ruined everything, she screamed during one phone call. My wedding is cancelled because you couldn't just be a good sister. But even Kelly eventually had to face reality. Her dream wedding had been built on stolen money and falsified documents. The vendors were refusing to continue services until payment sources were verified. Marcus, her fiancé, was actually supportive of postponing the wedding until the legal situation was resolved. I don't want to start our marriage with money that hurt your family, he told Kelly. We can have a smaller wedding that we actually pay for ourselves. My parents eventually accepted plea bargains that included restitution, community service, and probation. They avoided prison time by cooperating with the investigation and making full financial disclosure. The fraudulent loans were resolved through asset liquidation. The house was sold, expensive purchases were returned or resold, and my grandfather's financial liability was eliminated. More importantly, I recovered the $15,000 they'd pressured me into contributing, plus additional compensation for the unauthorized use of my credit profile. Killy and Marcus did eventually get married, a small ceremony paid for with their own savings and help from Marcus' family. It was actually more beautiful than the elaborate fraud-funded version would have been. The legal consequences created permanent changes in family dynamics. My parents' authority was broken, not through emotional confrontations, but through documented proof of their criminal behavior. Grandpa Hank became my closest family ally, bonded by our shared experience of being financially victimized. We meet for coffee every week now, and he's become the grandfather I always needed. Killy and I have a cautious but improving relationship. She's slowly recognizing how our parents' favoritism system was designed to pit us against each other. I never realized how much pressure they put on you, she admitted recently. I thought I was just lucky, not that you were being treated unfairly. My parents live in a smaller apartment now, working regular jobs without access to fraudulent credit. They occasionally try to re-establish control through guilt or manipulation. But the spell is permanently broken. When mom calls to complain about their reduced circumstances, I listen politely, and then redirect the conversation to practical matters. I hope you're both staying healthy, I say. Let me know if you need help finding community resources or legitimate financial assistance. The emotional weapons they used for years, guilt about family loyalty, accusations of selfishness, claims about their sacrifices, simply don't work anymore. This experience taught me that some family problems can't be solved through communication, therapy, or emotional appeals. When people are committed to maintaining unfair systems through deception and manipulation, only external accountability creates change. My parents weren't just showing favoritism or making poor financial decisions, they were committing crimes that hurt vulnerable family members. The only appropriate response was legal intervention, not family negotiation. The process also revealed which relationships were worth preserving. Grandpa Hank proved his genuine care through actions, not just words. Killy showed capacity for growth and self-reflection. Aunt Linda demonstrated that people can acknowledge mistakes and make amends. Most importantly, I learned that being a good daughter doesn't mean accepting abuse, theft, or manipulation. Family loyalty should flow both directions, and when it doesn't, protecting yourself and other vulnerable family members becomes the priority. I graduated debt-free, passed the P exam on my first attempt, and started my career with a respected accounting firm. The skills I developed investigating my parents' fraud turned out to be excellent preparation for forensic accounting work. I live in a city 3 hours away from my hometown. Close enough to visit Grandpa Hank regularly, but far enough to maintain healthy boundaries with my parents. The $15,000 I recovered became the foundation for genuine financial independence, instead of funding someone else's dreams through coercion. It's building my own future through my own choices. Sometimes people ask if I regret destroying my family over money, but I didn't destroy anything. I revealed what was already broken and protected innocent people from ongoing harm. My family is actually healthier now, built on honest relationships rather than fraudulent obligations. That's worth more than any amount of money, wedding expense, or false family peace. The most satisfying part isn't the justice or legal vindication. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing I can recognize manipulation, investigate effectively, and protect both myself and the people I care about. No one will ever again convince me to sacrifice my financial security for their lies, and if they try, I know exactly how to uncover the truth and document it properly. That's a skill worth developing. Regardless of whether you ever need to use it against family members or anyone else who thinks they can control you through deception, the truth, as it turns out, really can set you free. You just have to be willing to find it, document it, and act on it, even when the people you're investigating are the ones who raised you. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.